It is great to be back. Hi there, Aries. Dadhichi here with your November horoscope, and it's nearly the end of the year, so let's take a look at what's happening here. I'm going to animate the chart. We've got a few minutes to talk especially about this 8th house of your horoscope. Notice here the stationary retrograde Mercury. You've heard of the dreaded retrograde Mercury. Mercury rules your 3rd house, which is communications and contracts. Pardon me, here in the 8th house, which has to do with shared resources, banking, finance. So it's quite likely in the early part of the month, some of those matters are going to be in a bit of a tailspin. So you really need to check all of the information at hand. Venus moves to your 9th house. That's nice because with Jupiter here, this is very, very lucky. And I would say this is where, sometimes astrologers don't get it right. You can be looking at one factor here that is particularly difficult, but you've got to counteract that with some of these other lovely combinations. This Venus-Jupiter, what we call lucky karmic aspect in your 9th house, is going to slowly build in power and give you some great benefits. The lunar position here is also important, especially when it moves into this 12th house. These are spiritual combinations, but the squares here to Venus mean that you may be a little too nostalgic, over sentimental, a little bit reactive, and sort of projecting stuff onto other people. So that should last till around the 10th, when the moon moves out of this particular sector. Actually the 9th by the looks of it. If we keep your eye here, you'll see the dates that I'm talking about. And I notice some of you are asking me to mention the houses and what that actually means. So for example here, the moon moving into the opposition to Mars, 9th and 10th in the 1st house has to do with your relationships. A bit of a hair trigger period there because of the influence of Mars in your 7th house, and that's an important one. That's remaining there for a while. So there could be some combat going on with your partner. Could it be to do with your finances and your shared resources? Maybe, because look at the full moon here taking place on or about the 12th, right next to Uranus here. So that also brings into play this retrograde Mercury, the shared resources, the finances. So around this period, the middle of the month, you're going to have to be on your best behavior, very diplomatic, so that you can sidestep any of those issues. Look, for a general long-term trend, this is excellent to see Jupiter moving here closer and closer to this upper part of your horoscope. Venus also making its way up here. When you see an 8-degree orb, here we see the moon influencing these two now. The midpoint between these two is going to be powerful. Very lucky around the 14th, 15th, 16th, the influence of Jupiter and Venus and the moon here on this contractual area that we talked about. So the way you communicate is going to be enhanced at that time, middle of the month. 16th and 17th, few worries around the home area. We talked about that last month. Moon getting darker, which is your 4th ruler, which rules this particular area, the 4th house, your domestic sphere, your family, your mother, your historic family, some sort of worry over that. And you notice it also had that influence of Saturn that can sort of bring your mood down. But not for long. You've got this 5th house. It's a bit of a right angle here to the retrograde Mercury. Notice that that's staying retrograde for quite a while. Throughout this whole period, you're cautioned. That's maybe why this 5th house of creativity is going to give you a little bit of an outlet there. Again, that favourable trine aspect from Venus and Jupiter up here in the upper part of the horoscope. Trining also this Uranus. You see the grand trines that are forming? Nice, easy aspects that gives you the opportunity to create well, to speculate, to work with your children, enjoy some time with your family. 6th house, again, is health. We talked about this last month, especially these square aspects. Moon and Jupiter give you an excessive approach. So you need to just pull back, get your schedule working. Don't do more than is physically possible because that can and will affect your health. 23rd, 24th, moon is swinging around here back into the 7th house of relationships, where you are going to, I guess, be a little more emotional. But notice too that Mercury's now moved out of its retrogression around 22nd, 23rd. As it moves forward, give it a few days here. I normally say just because the planet has gone forward again doesn't mean that you're out of out of the woods. You need to give it a bit of an opportunity to move past the retrograde point where it went retrograde. Moon making aspect again here to Mars in this 8th house. It's interesting that this is where things can start to move forward for you as this Mercury moves forward, and then the Moon makes its aspect here to Mars in the 8th house. Mars is not a great planet in the 8th, but as it's your ruler, no problem. The new Moon in the 9th house coinciding with that exceptionally wonderful transit of Venus in your 10th house of career. A lovely sociable aspect, very lucky for you if you're looking for new work, or if you want to negotiate with your boss, especially here when the Moon comes up around the 29th. Here it's going to make contact with Jupiter and Venus right smack bang in the middle of that in your 10th house. I suspect at the very tail end of the month, some very, very good news for many of you born under Aries as far as your workplace agreements are concerned. And there on the 30th, a more sober, pragmatic transit of the Moon with Saturn and Pluto. I hope that has helped you this month. If you've got any feedback, by all means, drop me a line, subscribe here, and don't forget to join me at astrology.com.au for the monthly, the daily, and the yearly readings. I've started uploading some of the 2020 readings if you'd like to check that out. I've got yours up already, Aries. Look forward to your company next month. Bye-bye.